Have you ever wondered what emotional abuse really look like? I mean the kind that doesn't leave bruises, but that leaves scars you carried for years. My guest today lived that life. She wrote it down in journal pages hidden under her couch, just in case she didn't survive. This episode isn't easy, but it's important. It ever felt trapped, unseen, or like you were slowly disappearing? Please stick around. This is an important episode. Next on the podcast. Let's do this.
Welcome to the No Sitting on the Sideline Dad podcast, a podcast about a journey of discovery and conversations about not sitting on the sideline of life. Let's get involved. Here's host Joe Foley.
Hey, it's Joe. Welcome back to the podcast. This is a podcast about navigating life's issues while doing our best to show up for the people we love. Today's episode is a tough one, but it's also an important one. I'll be talking with Dana S. Diaz, who survived decades of narcissistic abuse from childhood to marriage. When I say abuse, I'm not talking about the stuff you can see, like somebody hitting somebody, somebody punching somebody. I'm talking about emotional control, manipulation, the kind of stress that literally made her sick. We dig into how the toxic pattern started, what makes it hard to escape, and how healing begins when you finally decide you're worth more. If you ever felt trapped in a relationship that seemed to didn't feel right, or watching somebody who loved go through it, this is the kind of episode that might open your eyes or your heart. Let's jump in my conversation with Dana. Welcome to the podcast, Dana.
Thank you for having me.
I got a question, because I always think narcissism is somebody staring in the mirror and looking in the mirror and going, I am wonderful, I'm the greatest thing on earth. But can you define narcissist for me, please?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's actually a great place to start because it's such a loosely used term. And I think people, the meaning has gotten lost and gotten away from us. So to address what you just said, you're actually correct. The word narcissist comes from the name of the Greek god Narcissus, who used to admire his reflection in the water because apparently he was oh so handsome. So we usually use that word to, refer to somebody like these people on social media with the abs or the lashes, and, you want to hate them, but they really do look as good as they think they do. So, it is what it is. Do with it what you will. But what we're talking about today are what we call malignant narcissists. And these are people, physicality aside, these are people that actually have deep insecurities about themselves. So they actually use control and manipulation and these overpowering tactics so that they feel superior to the people that we call it prey, that they prey upon. But it's really sad that this can go from that really difficult personality, the ex-husband or ex-wife, or it could be a friend, it could be a coworker that just creates a lot of problems for you, all the way over to the side of domestic violence, and even, unfortunately, not picking on men, but they say over a quarter of our male prison population, the murderers, the rapists, people like that, do have these narcissistic traits where they just feel that they are entitled to harm other people in order to feel good about themselves.
That's interesting. I never heard of that one. The malignant narcissist?
Malignant narcissists. Yes. I actually liken it, if people want to remember it this way, it's like tumors. You could have a benign tumor or a malignant tumor. The benign tumors are those traditional narcissists, the physical, attractive people. They're there. They may or may not bother you. Probably not, but there's nothing wrong with it. The malignant tumors, like narcissists, are going to cause you problems. You will be very aware of their presence, and they might even kill you. All joking aside, they might.
Oh, wow. How does that relate to you? How did that come for you?
That's actually where my first book, Gasping for Air, evolved. That was evolved from a journal I kept hidden under the couch cushion in the basement because I was married to a man. I was with him 25 years by the time it was over. But during COVID, right before the shelter in place, I had decided the violence and the hostility and the tension had increased incrementally over the years in a very insidious way. that I just got to my breaking point and I wanted to get a divorce. I couldn't do it anymore. I could not. I wanted to stay until my son was out of high school, but it was affecting my personal health. I actually became autoimmune and developed a lung disease as a result of
Hmm.
the chronic stress, as the doctors called it. So I went to a lawyer, and a week or two later, we went in under the shelter in place for COVID. And so I was locked in a house with a man who my neighbor said was running around telling people that he was actually at that point planning to get rid of me, if you know what I mean. So it was a very scary time. I was keeping a record because I was getting text messages, emails, verbal threats. Things were happening in the house that, let's just say, they could look like an accident to a reasonable person, but they weren't accidents. And so I needed a record for my sake to know if something did happen to me, that somebody would have to find eventually this journal that I was keeping to know that it was not an accident and that it was indeed him. So with the time, we all had time sitting at home during COVID. I was sitting at home stressing out about the man upstairs. He had these plans for me. So I was writing out my stories in my laptop. And that's eventually what became my book. But it's interesting because I almost wanted to name the book, I Can't Even Make This Stuff Up, because that's really what it felt like from the beginning to the end, was the things that they do, and also the dynamic of how they appear in public. Because I like to remind people that Ted Bundy, the serial killer, what did everyone say about him? He was handsome and charming. That's how he lured
Yes.
women. And yet his girlfriend's daughter back at home, 7-year-old little girl, thought he was the best thing ever. She was like daddy's girl, even though that wasn't her biological father. So he could be this amazing father of the year, yet go out and do what he does. Because I think people have an image that I'm out there looking for Chucky. I'm looking for men in with disheveled hair and striped sweaters and butcher knives. And that's not what a normal woman is attracted to. And I'm sure men could relate to that. You want somebody that is seemingly normal and sane, but also acts like that behind closed doors.
You just mentioned something about how they act and some things they do. Can you explain something about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of the easier ways to spot a narcissistic personality that would intentionally harm you at some point are the arrogance and the entitlement. For me, surefire sign, because when somebody actually feels justified in mistreating other people, and that may come even on a first date with somebody, that may come in making a snide remark about maybe an overweight person at the other table that's enjoying a meal. It could be being rude to the waitress or the wait staff, or pointing out, berating them about not bringing them their food or their drink, in proper time. Those are subtle signs in the beginning, because if somebody is okay with treating other people like that, and that's where that entitlement comes in, they feel that they deserve better because, lay out the red carpet, give them a crown. They
Yeah.
deserve, the world. They're going to expect that from you. If you are their partner, if you are their child, they are going to expect servitude. And if you don't jump when they say jump, and you don't jump how they want you to jump when they say jump, you're going to pay for it at some point. So the arrogance, entitlement, and I always tell people too, it's also in the treatment, but the verbiage. Anybody who treats you, for example, I'm not going to say these words on the show because they're not nice, but my ex had a 2-word phrase that he called me instead of my name. Like a normal
wow.
spouse would call you babe or honey or whatever, or maybe by your name. I had a 2-word phrase, and I'll let people imagine what that is. It was so common to me that I literally was responding to it like it was my name. And people would look, if they'd hear him say that to me, oh my gosh, yes, I'm the wife, the mother of his child. And he thought it was okay. And he was completely comfortable calling me that among a million other things that were just vile and disgusting. Somebody that loves you, and I'm going to say this for the men and women listening, Anybody who even cares about you a little bit does not refer to you with vulgar language like that. They don't use
Well,
that
one
language in a fight. It might slip out in a very heated argument. We're all human, but it does not become
Mhm.
consistent, regular verbiage when communicating with you.
the one thing that has come interesting in mind, I want to ask you is, do they thrive on control?
Absolutely. That's the basis of narcissism. Everything they do is to control you. It's like they lure you in the web. Ted Bundy was charming and handsome. They lure you in. They know everything to say. That's what we call the love bombing. They know how to get you. If you say your favorite ice cream is, strawberry cheesecake ice cream, oh my gosh, that's my favorite too. We were meant to be, two peas in a pod. They're going to feed you all the stuff, all those lies. You don't know if it's a lie or not, though, because you just met them. But over time, they will reveal that they are trying to isolate you. They will, I don't like your friends. Oh, that friend's a bad influence on you. Should you be hanging out with that friend of yours? Oh, you spend too much time at your mother's. Do you really need to talk to your sister every day? I know for me, it was, oh, do you need to go to church every Sunday? You spend more time with God at church than you do with me. It's 1 hour every Sunday for Mass. They want to isolate you so that they are the only influence on you. And if that's not control, I don't know what is.
You mentioned isolation, though. That's bad because you lose your friends,
Yeah.
lose your communication, lose your connections. How did that affect you?
I was born and raised in Chicago, big city. And this man somehow had me convinced. He moved me 90 miles outside of Chicago. Next thing I knew, I'm surrounded by farm fields and cows, and the neighbor is how many acres over. I was with this man 25 years. I literally, and I mean it, people don't believe me, but out where we were in this farm country, I probably went a solid 10, if not 15 years without seeing my next door neighbors, literally.
Oh, well,
No side of them, didn't talk to them. So it's amazing the things somebody can get away with when nobody's watching, too. So you have to be careful of these things. He didn't like me on the internet. He didn't like me going to the library and getting books to bring home and read because I wasn't paying attention to him, but I was also putting other people's ideas in my head. And you can't have ideas and you can't have financial independence. You can't work. I couldn't use my degree in journalism or my background in psychology because God forbid I have any sense of esteem or self-worth or value or pride, because then I might get some ideas to leave him. He had me cleaning houses with his best friend's wife in this podunk town. And I was the best damn house cleaner you could find. I promise you that. But, it's just very sad when I look back and think, I came out of this abusive childhood thinking nobody's ever going to mistreat me ever again. And yet what happened? I walked right into another situation where I was being taken advantage of and controlled. And I submitted to it, honestly, because I knew that role. I had played that role before. And especially after we had our son, you end up you think you're doing the right thing by keeping the family together for the kids. You suck it up.
that's one thing you mentioned. I think is interesting too is self-esteem. That did erode your self-esteem and self-worth.
Oh, completely. I don't even think erosion. It completely obliterated any sense of esteem
Hmm.
and self-worth. I had none. I mean, I had opportunities to leave. I had actually spoken to 7 attorneys total by the time I finally filed for divorce. So there were those glimpses of like, okay, I'm going to do it this time. But then I actually, and I know people won't understand this because there's this thing we call a trauma bond, but it's not just an emotional attachment to somebody. There are actually
Mhm.
chemical aspects to it where your brain actually tricks you. Your body is tricking you into believing, like a crack whore who needs, her fix. You think, oh my gosh, I cannot leave. I cannot, I will not be okay if I leave. And your body, like you will sweat. It literally is like a drug addiction. You will sweat, you will panic. Even I got out the door with my clothes and everything once. I was getting nauseous. My stomach was turning because you literally get sick because somehow you believe that you need to be with this person. It's a very complex situation to be in, but one that I want people to understand is not just about the low self-worth and self-esteem and feeling I honestly didn't think I deserved better because I had been trained by two abusive parents to think that I didn't matter and that I was even told I shouldn't even exist. So yeah, I didn't have any to go to begin with, and he obliterated any chance. But when you feel like you literally can't live without somebody, there's no lower point in life than to be at that point.
It's interesting. You keep mentioning about your stuff about the abuse in your childhood and your self-esteem and all that stuff. You had and also I think you said two narcissist parents.
Yes.
And how did that work out for you? Because I know that can be very devastating as a child.
Oh, absolutely. I don't even know where to start with that. That's my second book, Choking on Shame. But my mother was an unwed teenage mother. And I
Mhm.
always say I don't think she wanted any children. So it might not have been me personally that she didn't want, because she had her tubes tied immediately after I was born. And yes, as a teenager, they did that in the 70s, I guess. But she didn't want me anymore when I got here than when I was in her belly. There was definitely a physical and emotional distance. I was referred to as an accident and a mistake. So that can give you an idea of how that went with her. I always felt like I was an embarrassment, a physical manifestation of her biggest regret, her big mistake. And that's a hard thing to really, you internalize that even without understanding it at a young age. But then she married a man who was not my biological father, but whew, he was something. He still is something, I hear, but none of us are in contact. But he added the physical abuse to the little party, and that was not fun. But it's sad because the bruises healed, the hand marks healed. But what stayed with me was just the words, the being told to my face with the pointed waving finger in my face that I'm a bother and I'm a burden, that my mother will never love me. Nobody will ever love me. Even when I was 6 years old, eating toast, just bread with butter on it for breakfast. And he said, if I keep eating like that, I'm going to have wide hips like a middle aged woman, and then nobody's going to love me. And then he'd call me a whore when I would go to dance class with a leotard and tights. And so, yeah, I grew up feeling very, very, I just felt all wrong. Nothing I said or did was right. I was never going to be enough. And it's a very crippling way to start your life.
It was interesting. I was thinking about that. We had similar childhoods. I'll be honest with you. I had a stepfather who was a narcissist. I swear to God, he would go to church, and every church we went to, like, he had to be involved, like the sports director or whatever, the recreation director of the church or something, and he had to be involved. And it's kind of like that. And we had to be we had to go to church every Sunday. It was definitely an experience because every other Sunday I would purposely work a part-time job when I was young, so I wouldn't have to go to church. I know that's not wrong. I still wanted to go to church. I believe in God, but we did that. But having that experience, and I can relate to the same thing. Situation is sitting at a table and I'm eating dinner, and all of a sudden the plate comes flying at my head, calling me, "You're fat, you're overweight. Why are you eating that food?" Making fun of you.
Yeah, isn't
So
that
I can
sad?
relate to where you're coming from.
Yeah. And I'm sorry you had to go through that, but that's the thing, is that it doesn't matter what gender you are. These narcissists don't care what age you are. It started with me when I was about 3, 4, 5 years old with this man. And,
Mhm.
I'm 49 now, and this stuff still taps me on the shoulder once in a while and says, we're still here. We're still haunting you. But it does take almost a lifetime to really resolve and get over it to the point where you can accept and understand that it was wrong, and it was their unhealed trauma that they were burdening us with, that they were putting onto somebody else so that they didn't have to face it themselves.
You mentioned that. It's interesting. I was thinking about that. Every parents have their stories, and they bring it into with the child and stuff like that. And I know personally, my father and my mother didn't have a great growing up. They had broken homes and stuff like that. And it sounds interesting. Was that similar for both of your parents? And all of a sudden, that's how you end up maybe in the situation you're in?
Absolutely. No question. My stepfather, yeah. I mean, I could probably write a book about his story, but he was one of 5 children. I think he was the fourth out of fifth children, and they were abandoned by both parents, and then ended up in the foster system, separated, and he was abused. That does not make it an excuse to take that out on me, however. And my mother, yeah, she had an abusive, drunk, alcoholic father, who did horrific things like put a gun to her head, in the bathtub. And he brought women home to have sex with them, even though my grandma was sleeping in, the next room. So horrific things. But one thing I will say, I don't excuse it. I don't forgive it. I still think the way somebody treats a child is a choice, especially if they came out of abusive childhoods like we did. Because I'm guessing you don't abuse your kid. I know I didn't abuse mine. We made a choice because we didn't want them to feel any bit of the pain that we felt when we were kids.
Well, it's definitely true. And I'm curious also too, is how do you overcome because I know it lingers on. How did you come up over the self-esteem issue? How did you make yourself life better for yourself after you left your ex-husband?
Well, that's a, you have to go to healing and there's so many different healing modalities out there. I'm going to be honest with you. I am not a big fan of talk therapy because you cannot go somewhere and talk to somebody every Tuesday afternoon at 3:00 and then everything's okay. You have to make diligent daily effort. You have to be very disciplined about how you approach things because there are core issues. It's not just about why do I feel so lowly about myself? It's about going back, even to those original moments. Keep going back and back and back. So you find where was that original time that you felt this way? What did they say to you? What did they do to you? And feeling that, because they say you have to feel to heal, but you really do. And you have to process exactly how you felt at that time and how it affected you so deeply. But it also, I will say, if anyone's looking for a quick fix, it goes to self-talk. Because what happens to us when we come out of abusive childhoods like that, we have that, I'm an 80s kid, so I go to tape players, but we have that tape player looping in our head. You're this, you're that, you're not this, you'll never be, you can't, you won't, you shouldn't, all that stuff just goes on a replay in our mind. We have to literally press stop, pull the tape out. If you're an 80s kid too, you're going to take the little, what is it, the film inside and pull that crap out, yank it out of there. And you're going to put that tape back in and you're going to press record and play together because that's how you actually record. And you're going to talk to yourself the way that you should have been talked to. And you're going to retrain your mind and say things like, no, I'm not broken. I'm affected reasonably, but I'm not broken. I'm still a whole person. I may not be healed, but I can still have healthy relationships. I am trying to like myself. I may not love myself yet. Just because mom and dad didn't love me doesn't mean I can't love me. You just have to work through the stuff and really, get down to the thing. Just because one person rejects you or 10 people doesn't mean you're not worthy. You do deserve, and you have to say that stuff. It sounds like that Saturday Night Live skit where, I forget, was it Pat or whatever that character?
Stuart Smalley.
Stuart Smalley. I'm thinking Pat, which is a whole other character.
Darn it, people like me.
You know what? There is, in therapy, there is mirror work that you do, but sometimes you have to stand in a mirror, or if you're one that likes to write, they say write it down 3 times, a few times a day. But yes, to say, I am lovable. I like myself. I actually have a really good life. I am really smart. I am really whatever it is, because we have to kind of go back. They call that reparenting yourself. But if you can replace that loop in your head, then when something happens to make you feel small and somebody diminishes you and treats you like, you were treated back then, instead of getting all depressed and anxious and going down that rabbit hole, then you're like, it's annoying. It bothers me. Too bad this person doesn't really know me. But no, I actually am not what they think I am. I'm who I know I am.
That's one thing that was interesting too. Did you have anger? From
tremendous.
How did you deal with it?
The inner child is funny because people talk about the inner child. And I was always like, oh, the inner child's fine. It's the really pissed off 15-year-old. She's the one to watch out for. Deal with that. I'm going to be honest with you. Everybody's different, but I was working with somebody that did things a lot untraditionally, because that's what worked for me. And unfortunately, I still live out in the country and I have some acreage, so people don't see what I do out here. But she told me to go out, whether it's to my fire pit or wherever. She said, just start throwing crap around, yelling and scream, just get it out. Because I think what people don't realize is all that stuff that we build in, if we don't get it outside of ourselves, it's going to stay in there and fester. And that's where that anger comes in. It's all that built up resentment and grief and frustration and all those things you didn't say. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I've heard they have these things called rage rooms that would have served my purpose fine, but I just had my own outside. I was throwing 2x4s that I found in the fire pit. I was screaming at people that weren't there, but I got it out. And it was, I mean, when I was done, honestly, I was out of breath. It was a very physical thing for me to do, but it felt really good to just kind of tear stuff up. I couldn't hurt the grass or the dirt or anything going on out there, but it felt good to get it out of me. It's just because it builds up like bad energy and you want to get it out of you.
It's interesting talking about rage and stuff. I was thinking about music like Green Day, Pearl Jam, and start screaming like you're playing that music real loud, like let's go,
Yeah,
fighting.
I'm a huge Green Day fan, so you got me there.
It's interesting too. Also, you had to be a co-parent with this gentleman that was your ex-husband.
Yes.
And how difficult is co-parenting with somebody with narcissism?
I actually got lucky on that one, but it was still difficult. The place I got lucky with that was when I divorced him. Yes, my son was still a minor, but not that far from being 18. But it didn't matter because my narcissistic ex didn't want any part of his own child, his only child, and he wanted no part of him. Didn't even try to fight me on custody, made no effort, and nor did I go after him for any child support, he didn't have any responsibility financially to our son for education, for medical, nothing. So that suited me fine because I thought the least involved he is, especially financially, then that is solely my son to make decisions for. But, and this is something everybody has to deal with, even in a regular divorce, if they're not a narcissist, but it's much worse with a narcissist, is when they use the children as pawns against you. You have committed a very grave offense by rejecting them, even if they leave you, it's going to somehow be your fault, and they will villainize you to the end of days. Yeah. To make sure everybody knows how awful you were. They will make things up. They will tell your children, whether your child is 5 or 50, your child will know things or think they know things about you that they were never privy to. And that's where it gets tricky. Because certainly in my situation, my ex was telling my son all kinds of things. And the way I handled it, and everybody to each their own, but my son would come to me and say, well, Dad is saying this about you. Is that true that you did this or that or the other thing? I said, listen to me. My relationship with your dad, believe me, I wish that divorce papers ended the relationship. It was a division of financial assets, but the relationship has stayed the same. God help us all. But I said, my relationship with you is with you. I love you. I got you. Your life is exactly the same as it was before the divorce. We're in the same house. You're going to the same school. You don't need to worry about the stuff between me and your dad. That is our business, our relationship. That is between us. And I'm not going to discuss it with you. And my son got a little upset a few times. You're not even going to defend yourself because he said this, that, and the other thing. I said, well, your dad says a lot of things, but I'm not going to defend myself because I know my truth. And you know me, and I expect you to know my truth too, but I'm not getting involved in this. I'm not going to sit here and say anything bad about your dad. I know some people now say, well, you wrote the book, but you know what? The book wasn't vengeance. The book was to warn other people truthfully about what can happen to your health and what can happen to you if you choose to stay in these relationships because you're thinking you're doing something noble by keeping the family together, as we often do.
It's interesting you say about it because divorce itself is very emotionally charged. In divorce itself, as a person who's gone through it myself, I understand how emotionally in charge it is. And it's very easy when you're emotionally charged to say negative things. and especially if there's a child involved. And thank God that I understand coming, like same as you coming from the situation, is that's not the proper way to handle it. But it's very easy to turn the other direction.
Oh, absolutely. And it takes a lot of self-control. But you know what? I think that comes with the responsibility of being a parent. If you choose to have
Mhm.
a child and you're raising that child, it's your responsibility. To some extent, we all have to sometimes put aside our thing, our stuff, and put our child first. What benefit would it have been to sit there and defend myself to my son? He is not the judge and jury.
Yeah.
Some say God is, or whoever. Some say there is none, and whatever it is, but he does not need to be in the middle. I always say there's enough for two people to handle in a relationship. You don't need a third person putting the hand in the cookie jar. And my son had nothing to do with the relationship between me and my ex. So that's why I just told him, you don't need to worry about it. If your dad is involving you with whatever he's saying, I said, that's between you and him. And what you feel about your dad, how you relate to your dad, what you do with your dad is on you. Me and you, that's all I'm worried about. But this conversation ends now. You have to be the adult sometimes and just say no.
Especially in that kind of relationships too. Also, like it can lead to alienation.
Yeah.
Also guilt tripping. Tell him. I give an example. When I was younger, my mom would tell me how bad my dad was. How bad he was, the most awful person in the world. You don't have to tell anybody your last name is Foley, because your dad was horrible. But my dad was really not that bad. But that's one way I think of manipulating in a way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's all manipulation. And even things like when my ex found out that, I don't know how he found out, but he seemed to find out that I was seeing somebody. I was divorced. I was free to do what I want to do. And I don't have to answer to anybody, but he was feeding my son things about, oh, your mom's a whore. Your mom's running around loosey goosey, just saying all these terrible things. And there was even someone else. This comes up in my third book, another narcissist in my life that was running around saying that, all these things I was doing after the divorce, living my life, but that, oh, I'm mentally unstable and that I was, suicidal. And I'm thinking, my God, if that got back to my son, I mean, he's living with me. I'm a single mother. How do you think that would make him feel after everything? He doesn't even know the half of what I dealt with his dad. But how would that make him feel? That's scary. Why would you say the lies that they come up with are just sometimes so atrocious? You wonder, and they have children. Like you would think people with children would think, why would I say this about their parents? You don't want to say that. I mean, my gosh, even the Italian mob knows you keep the wives and children out. Just like, my gosh, have some respect. But, when it comes to narcissists, that's the thing. It could be a baby or 100-year-old person. They don't care as long as they're getting their fill and manipulating people. And if you turn on them, they want to turn everybody else against you too. And that's where those kids come in with divorce. You could have adult children. You could be 56 years old and have adult children. They will try to turn those children against you. They will want you to never see your grandchildren. They will try to make sure that you suffer in some way for not being with them.
I was definitely interested. Do any effective tools that can help somebody, like maybe some methods or something?
The best method is honestly, and I know people fight me on this, but you cut contact. I go back to the malignant tumor. If it is there, it is going to keep bothering you. And keeping it in your life, even minimally, responding to it, reacting to it, it's just going to invite more. It's just going to invite more trouble for you. You have to cut them out of your life. And people say, oh, but we have minor children. I have to. No, you don't have to. That's why there are court-appointed third parties. That's why there are other family members that can do exchanges for the weekends or whatever it is for you. You do not need to have contact. I just think that any kind of contact, like I said, even when it seems nice, oftentimes with narcissists, it's not nice. And anything you say or do will be used against you when it comes to a narcissist. You could say the nicest thing, you could say nothing, it will be used against you. Cut contact. Cut it out. Mm-hmm. Don't look at them on social media. Don't follow them. Don't text them. Don't call them. Don't nothing. But for those people who aren't going to cut contact, because most people fight me on that if there's children, This is what I will say. One tip that I did have to use in the end: do not answer the phone to them. Do not answer the phone and do not talk to them in person. Make them leave you voicemails, make them text you, make them email you, because I promise you, you will need whatever they say in court for evidence. And it needs to be written or, on an audio clip from like a voicemail, but do not answer the phone to them. Getting into a live or even a phone conversation, they will be unhinged, but they will get more unhinged by you not answering the phone and leave you what you need in court on your voicemail or text. I promise you.
That's one thing that was interesting I was thinking about, and one thing me and my son's mother, and we deal with it, is in the beginning, I always use this one thing is, whatever you do to me affects Sean, and whatever I do to you affects Sean. So let's not play this game. Let's not play. We try to keep it even keel and do the best we can and co-parent our son. Because if one person starts throwing daggers, it's going to, because the other parent's going to be upset, and it's going to affect the son within the care of whatever parent is. That was kind of like my thing when I said that's all, and
Right.
that was my frame of mind.
And that is a reasonable frame of mind. And that's what I would hope any parent would feel. But unfortunately, with true narcissists, they don't care about the effect on the child. Let me give you a quick example. My ex-husband even went so far as to tell me that he is going to make sure that our son gets involved with drugs and alcohol and maybe even doesn't graduate
Wow.
school to show me what happens for divorcing him. They don't care about the effect on the kids. And I will reassure everybody, my son is doing very well and is 22 years old, and he did not get involved in drugs and alcohol or anything, and finished school after that. And he's actually doing phenomenally well, much more so than I had expected, but I'm so grateful. But they don't care. They will actually drive children to fail in life and drive them to unhealthy habits and things just to stick it to you.
That's a mean and nasty way to dealing with things. And
That's a narcissist.
that's the thing too, is maybe shift a little bit about surviving and healing, moving forward. How does somebody survive and heal and move forward?
You have to want to, number one. And I know that sounds silly to most people, but there are actually people that they really are. I think it comes out of fear, but they're scared to heal and move on, because when you're with somebody that controls every aspect of your life like that and manipulates you and gaslights you, you lose yourself in that. So you don't even know who you are. But to think about healing and not know who you're even going to become after that is even scarier, because at least you're comfortable where you're at, as awful as it is, unhealed, knowing the trauma, the triggers, the PTSD, all these things. You can manage it. It's scary to heal. But if you do want to heal, again, I always say everybody is different. Everybody responds differently. There's music therapy. There's goat yoga. There is talk therapy for those who think it would benefit them. There's spiritual psychologists. There's writing therapies. I did a writing therapy a few years ago, and actually that was actually really helpful. It got me a little part of the way, where I needed to be, but you just have to find what works for you. Use Google, look in your community, but there's so many resources.
I'm going to make a joke, but I got to ask this. Goat yoga?
Yes.
Did you do that?
I did
How
not
was-
do
how-
goat yoga, but I would love to. I'm
That's
not a
me on
big
TV.
yoga
I'm like-
person. Like, I don't sit around like meditating or anything, but I just want to try it to see how this works.
You mentioned goat yoga, so I had to ask that question because I remember seeing it on TV going, the goat walks in your back and
Oh.
all this fun stuff.
It's like a massage.
Yeah, they sit there. I was like, I had to ask that question. I think it was interesting. because
Fair.
I know you had to deal with a health crisis yourself too, going through this. What was your health crisis?
So right before, and the reason that I finally, you would think it was the cheating or the crowbars being swung at my head or guns and knives. No, it was when I got sick that actually was the deal breaker for me, that I had to be done with this guy. The chronic stress, as the doctor said, had caused so much of the stress hormone cortisol to run through my body that I was having autoimmune reactions. I mean, I had about 24 different random symptoms ranging from my hands just numbing for no reason, going completely dead, to blacking out, vision issues, heart palpitations. My legs would stiffen terribly, just at like rigor mortis, like immediate onset. It was weird stuff. I had neurological issues. You name it, I had it. It was so bad, I started keeping a spreadsheet. I'm a type A. So for me, it was a spreadsheet to mark down every day, and the migraines, the stomach, I mean, everything. It was, my body was just wreaking havoc. The doctors found out, Mayo Clinic found out it was cortisol. It's a stress hormone that runs through your body. I was in fight or flight mode, basically 24/7 for how many decades? And it had caused my white blood cells to think it had to eradicate some terrible threat, that my white blood cells killed themselves off instead. So I was
Oh,
having
wow.
autoimmune reactions, but then it also caused a lung syndrome called upper airway resistance syndrome. This is rare and not widely known, but it's like having COPD and fibromyalgia all at once. I have more fibromyalgia symptoms, but it feels very much, for anyone that did have COVID, it's interesting because it's, when I get what I call Dana sick, it feels like COVID, except my oxygen saturation sometimes fell in like down to 83% was the lowest it ever went, where COVID levels were 93%. So that gives you an idea. And that
Wow.
was literally caused by, again, what the doctors call chronic stress. When they say stress can kill you. So that was a terrible thing. I had dropped down to 93 skeletal pounds, which, you know, women like to look
Wow.
nice and small and fit, but that was sickly and awful and shouldn't have been. That's not a normal weight for a 45-year-old woman. But I had a breathing machine and a backpack with the mask on my face. And for somebody that ate hard-boiled eggs and apples for lunch and ran 5 miles a day and coached cross country, it didn't make sense. It was stress. It was the stress of living in those conditions.
They always say that cortisol runs your body always on, like you said, they're always on and 100% all the time. Wow, that's scary. Yeah, I'm trying to think of the right word, scary,
Yeah.
but how, one other question I was interested in is too, is moving forward into a new relationship and relationships. How did that work out for you?
It worked out really well for me because I ended up marrying somebody that I already knew and whose family I had known for over a decade. So I got lucky. But I'll tell you what, after what I went through in my first marriage, I honestly had never thought, I would never have even considered getting married again, ever. I didn't even know if I wanted to date. I had a plan to just run away to the mountains in North Carolina and just hide from the world for the rest of my life, and just write my books and get a Great Dane and just be at peace, you know? But, you know, it worked out for me. But I think the biggest issue for anybody, whether you just had trauma in your childhood or you had it again, or only in a romantic relationship, you know, you hear people say, I'm broken, I'm damaged. And it makes me cringe when people say that, even though I have said that about myself. The thing is, we just don't know what to do with all that trauma, the betrayal, the grief, because we are mourning what was or what we thought was and what could have been and all these things. There's a lot to process there, but we need to remember that not everybody is intentionally harmful. Not everybody is going to hurt you. But if we love ourselves enough to mourn and grieve and then move on to heal, just accepting the past and processing it in whatever way works, we can have healthy relationships. You know, is it a struggle? Yes, you need to be with somebody that understands where you came from. And I think that's where I had that advantage. It was somebody I knew for a long time. And like I said, knew his family. So they were very well aware of my previous situation and my childhood. So there was that grace and that patience while I did heal, because healing is nasty and awful. I am telling people, I think people think your magic fairy godmother is going to come wave a wand over you while you sleep. And you did a year of therapy and suddenly you're going to be, you know, riding unicorns over rainbows. And that's not how it works. It is awful because you have to dive down head on, willingly and voluntarily, into the depths of hell to just face those demons and confront them. And then you can come back, and you come back a little bit different, but in a good way, in a way that you can now handle anything else that comes at you, that you come back feeling good about yourself. All those things we were talking about, the self-worth and self-esteem, when you are healing,
Mhm.
those things come back, and you know you deserve better. You're not going to tolerate that guy that you met when you were 19, or that gal you met when you were 21 in college, or whatever it is. You wouldn't tolerate that mistreatment anymore, because you know how to set boundaries. You respect yourself enough to set the boundaries, and that's just what it is.
That's one thing I was thinking about too is I don't like when people say, get over it. You should be able to move forward. I don't think they quite understand unless they experience the same experience as you or anybody else. They've never been in that person's shoes. They don't understand. It's not like that. It takes time. It takes work. It takes effort. Yeah, you may not be different, but you may be different. But yeah, I get it. Yeah, I've heard that too. Get over it. Move forward. Do
That
this.
makes
I'm like,
I hate when people say that, because I tell them I wish I could get over it, but I have a lung disease now as a souvenir of the past. I can't get over it. Every day of my life, I have to think about it. Like, you hear the scratchiness in my voice.
mhm.
That's what that is. That's me just lacking oxygen because I'm talking. And that's not normal. So I do think about it. And anybody that comes out of a situation like that, even just divorce, can be traumatic for people. You have
Yeah.
PTSD on some level. You are like somebody that just came back from Vietnam, and you have triggers. You're going to have nightmares. You're going to wake up sweating. You're gonna, there's things that are going to make your heart race, and your pits are going to get wet because you're around certain people that really make you feel uncomfortable. It's not something we can do. Believe me, I tell people when they say that to me, what do you think? I want to live like this? Do you think this is fun for me? It's not fun. I wish I could get over it. And I also want to warn people, don't ever say get help or you need help. You think the person doesn't want help or doesn't know that they could use some help? That's just such an insulting, and I don't know, it just feels demeaning to me. But I think what we need to learn to do is just give people that space. The best thing anyone ever did for me while I was still in that first marriage, it was an old lady at church that, I'm a good Catholic girl. I was on my knees after communion, but I was crying because I just didn't, I knew communion was the end of mass, and I had to go back to that house. And I had tears coming down my eyes because I didn't want to go home, but I had to go home. Otherwise, I'd be accused of running around and doing God knows what. But the old lady at church in the pew behind me, she just put her hand on my shoulder and squeezed, and I felt seen. I felt like somebody saw me, saw my pain, and just that's all I needed. I didn't need another person to tell me, you deserve better. When are you going to leave him? Why are you doing it? Must not be that bad if you're staying. I don't need that crap when I'm in that situation. I just need somebody to see me and to just give me a little encouragement.
Definitely too. Wrapping up, I think of the final thought message of this message of hope. What one thing you can leave, maybe something with a person who's going through this, a message of hope?
Message of hope. I always like to think that I can be a demonstration that your past does not need to define you. I am not the mistake or accident that my mother said I was, which means I'm not worthless. I have value. And when I started seeing my own value and my own worth and loving myself, that started to reflect back to me in the people that I chose to have around me and in the relationships. That's when you're going to see healthy relationships. Because when you look at yourself in a bad light, you're going to attract people who reiterate that to you. So do the Stuart Smiley thing, get in front of that mirror, write it down, remind yourself you are a rock star. You are meant to be here, because I promise you, you hear it all the time, but you are not alone. There are so many of us out there. We don't know you, but we got you. We see you. We validate you, but you're going to be good. Just tell yourself that and you'll be fine.
I still, every time you say the Stuart Smalley thing, I giggle a little bit because I used to remember, just a side note before we wrap up, is I used to sneak and stay up to watch Saturday Night Live just to see
I did too.
all the fun stuff. And Stuart Smalley that was a meme and stuff. It was funny, but you're right about self-talk.
Yeah.
Self-talk is a big deal. And we talk nasty about ourselves that we wouldn't say to somebody else and somebody we love. So be kind to yourself. Where they can connect you, find more about your book and more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. I always refer people to my website, danasdiaz.com. You can click links to my socials there. You can see all the books there. Click the links to buy them from there. I have a blog, different things, all kinds of resources. But that's the best way to find me. Follow me on socials. And if anybody that has listened to this thinks that they know somebody who's in a situation that might benefit, I encourage them to share this podcast, because there's a lot of people that might not realize they need to hear this message, and it's real easy to click that share button and get the message to them.
Thank you much for being on the podcast, and I really do appreciate it. All links are in the show notes for this episode. Thank you much for your time. I really do appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Hey, I just want to take a moment and say thank you for listening. Really. These are the kind of conversations that aren't always easy to have, but they matter. And I'm glad you took time to listen. Hey, a big thanks to Dana S. Diaz for opening up and sharing what she's been through. It takes guts. I mean, really takes guts. If any of the part of her story felt familiar to you, please do not carry it alone. If you want to dig deeper or check out Dana's books and everything we talked about is waiting for you over at nosittingonthesideline.com/165. That's where the show notes are. All the links and everything we talked about will be there. Hey, if you have a second, while you're there, sign up for the email newsletter. It's kind of like I send you behind the scenes or stuff that we didn't talk about in the podcast, but it will be important. All right. Seriously, take care of yourself. You're worth it. Until next time, take care. See ya.